Hi, welcome to Crafting at Home with Tully. My name is David, and today, to celebrate Chinese New Year, we are going to be making these really quite fabulous Eggbox dragons. So they are really easy to make, but they are super fun. So for this craft, you're going to need a few different bits and bobs. First of all, you're going to need an egg box. Now I'm using one that has 10 eggs, cut it in half. Don't worry if you don't have one that big, a smaller one will be great anyway, or you could always kind of attach a couple together and make a longer wiggly dragon. You'll also need a good pair of scissors. Now if you're using ones like this, these ones are quite sharp, make sure you ask for a grown-up's permission or a grown-up's help when you're using them. To decorate your dragon, you will need either some paint, or if you don't have access to paint, don't worry, you can colour it with pens, it'll just take a little bit longer. Now of course, if you are using paint, you'll need a tub of water and some paint brushes. So like I normally do, I'm using quite a wide brush for painting and then a thinner brush for any of the details I need to do. You also might need some different coloured, different eyes. Now you could either use sticky eyes like I am, googly eyes, which are amazing, or you could even paint your eyes on or make them out of card. And speaking of card, you will need a piece to make the head. So I've got a nice piece of quite thick card. You could use cereal box card or something like that. Just make it a bit more rigid than a thinner piece of card. And help stick that on, you'll need some glue. Now I'm just using a normal glue stick. You could use anything, you could use PVA, or if you've got access to one and permission to use it, you could use a hot glue gun instead. One other thing you'll need, mainly for the tail, which as you can see is very jazzy, you'll need some wool. Now if you don't have wool, don't worry, I'm sure you could use many other things. I've got 3 different colours of wool here. I'm just going to pop these down just there. So that is basically everything you're going to need for making this craft. Now the first thing you're going to need to do is get ready to start making. So I'm going to clear the deck and we're going to get prepped for starting this craft. I'll leave the brush on because I'll need that in a second. So I'm going to be painting mine, but like I said, you could use pens, you could use colouring pencils and things like that as well. Now, the first thing to do, because obviously our dragon won't stand up with these bits, so you need to carefully cut them to be about the same length as the rest of the cardboard, and then it'll stand nicely. But when you're doing this, don't chuck any bits you cut off away, because if you look at the dragon I made, it's got a load of spines on it as well, so we can do those later on. So let's pop those in a nice pile. Anything we don't use, obviously, like normal, we'll put it to one side and we'll take it down for recycling later on. Now, this dragon's going to look a little bit odd with these holes cut out on one side and nothing on the other. So the next job to do is to cut a triangle in each one of these cups all the way along. They're really easy to do. Doesn't have to be perfectly accurate because all dragons are slightly different. And we'll just trim our way like this to make some nice spiny bits on this dragon. Now, dragons are really important in Chinese culture. I think it's amazing. I absolutely love dragons. There's such an interesting, so many interesting stories about them and things like that. So, there we go, that's my legs cut, and if you look at that, that stands quite well. Might need a little bit of trimming on these bits here, but I'll get around to that in a little bit. So I might trim these off now, and just get them out of the way. So we'll just quickly trim, one more, and just cut this little end lip off as well. I think that's where the hinge of the box was. That stands a lot sturdier now. So I'm just going to move these little bits out of the way, and we'll get on to making some spines. So I'll just take off any extra bits. You can see some of these have little bits that are stuck on from where I cut it. Some of them don't. This one probably needs a little trim. There we go. And we'll be sticking them to these bits here. Now, because Eggboxes are quite strong cardboard, it will need to be kind of stuck properly. So this is where, if you have a hot glue gun, it's probably worth using, or PVA glue. But if you put enough of a Pritt stick on, it will stick. It'll just take a little bit longer. We'll just have to hold that on, bend it out a little bit to make the spine. Hold that in, and it will start to stick. And what we'll do is we'll stick these first, and then they are sticking while we do other parts of the craft before we paint it. Very important to do them in order, just because then they've got plenty of time to stick. So if I squeeze those really tight with my fingers, that will help them stick a bit better. Now, I have a few different sizes, so I'm going to stick this one on here, and that'll make a bit of a... We'll have some different spines going down it. You'll see they don't go in perfectly, so they do need to be pushed, and then they bend the right shape. They do sometimes come out, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do now is stick this in. I'm going to squeeze it really, really tight. And just wait a couple of seconds and hope that this will hold. It looks like it's going to hold mostly. If it doesn't hold, don't worry, you can always re-glue it later. Or like I said, use some stronger glue. All I'm going to do here is cut some of these to make some more spines for my dragon. A little bit more glue. And a little bit more glue. We'll just hold those like that for a second, and it'll set. And one last set of spines for this end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all the way up, and then I'm just going to make one spine there, oops, and another spine there. There we go. So that is a really easy start to your dragon. And we're going to leave these now for a little bit just to make sure they dry properly. Once I've put this last spine on and make sure I've squished it into place, I'm going to put this to one side and make sure that it dries nice and properly, ready to be painted. So this is the spines of the dragon ready to go. I'll just move these out of the way. Now the next thing we need, dragon isn't complete without a head. So I'm going to grab my spare bit of cardboard, this bit here. I'm going to make a head. Now obviously if you want to, you could sketch it out, draw it out, things like that. I am going to grab a pencil and I'm going to draw a sort of dragon head shape. So I think I'm going to go with a bit of a, let's go with a sort of bumpy nose, and I'll just draw a little circle there so I know where I'm going to put my nostrils. And I think actually I've made it slightly too high on this bit here, so I'm going to just curve that around a bit better because I need it to fit onto the egg box. So if I draw a nice thick line, then I can see it when I'm cutting it out. And don't worry about drawing on this because you'll be painting or colouring over it anyway. So that is probably quite a good shape for my dragon head. So I'm just going to carefully cut this out. Now don't worry about the extra bits because we're actually going to be using some of this extra card to make some horns. So what I'm going to do, I've got two nice sections of extra cards. So I'm just going to do a little snip. I'm going to make a some sort of horn here. I don't know quite what shape it's going to be, but I think I'm going to use this curve that I've already cut just there to make a bit of a curved horn, like that. I've done a little wiggle here, so that looks kind of cool. Now I'm going to do something similar for this side. It doesn't have to match, it's just going to be a similar idea for a horn. So this is going to go, and it's going to curve in a bit more. So it's going to have two different horns, this dragon. Of course, if you want to, you could have your dragon having the same horns. It doesn't have to have any horns at all. I just thought it would be kind of cool to have some horns on my dragon. I'm going to carefully stick these on to the cardboard. So then again, they're ready to paint. I'm just going to put a bit of glue on here. This one's going to go on this side. I'm going to put a bit of glue on here. It's going to go on the other side. There we go. So that is my dragon's head, ready to go, ready to be painted or coloured in. Now, one last thing to quickly check is the spines seem to be sticking. So that's good. And I'm just going to check that that'll fit, because I don't want to have it too big. I know the horns are massive, but I think they look quite good being really, really huge. So I am going to just carefully put a little bend in it. You don't have to fold it very far. It's just a little bend so it'll curve and fit onto there later on. So as you can see, I've set up my paint station. I have a little palette pad here. If you don't have one, don't worry. You could just use a plastic box or a lid or something like that. Now I think a red dragon is in order here because red is a very lucky colour in China. So I'm just going to put a nice big blob of red right here. There we go. Okay, so I also need to get my water. So I'm going to just dip the brush in there just to get the bristles a little bit softer, ready to go. And also thin the paint a little bit, make it easier to put on. So I'll just mix that and start to load my brush with all this lovely red paint. Ah, that's looking perfect. Now, when you're doing the dragon, there's a few things you need to remember. The spines are quite fragile still, so the best way to do it is hold on to them, and like I'm doing, just brush upwards from your finger. Do that both sides, and then, so yeah, on inside and outside, on both sides of the dragon. Then carry that on all the way down the rest of the dragon. So there's quite a few spines to do, and it'll take a little while to do, but that's fine. Once you've done that, just paint downwards so you don't accidentally pull that glue that you've stuck them on with and accidentally pull the spine off. So we really don't want that to happen. Now, I am going to finish off painting this dragon as we go, and I'll see you back here shortly. Welcome back. So as you can see, I have painted the body of my dragon a lovely red colour. I also have started on the face. Now I've painted part of the face red, but I thought I'd do the horns in a different colour, so I chose black to really stand out. So I think what we need to do is finish off this black paint, and we'll add in some of the features. I'm just going to add a little bit more of the water to the paint so it thins a little bit, makes it easier to spread. I'm just going to very carefully paint this horn. Now I'm doing this over the palette, so if I do go off the edges, I don't get it on the table. It's very good a move. So nice and quick. Obviously you guys will have a lot more time to do this at home. I'm just wanting to show you a quick way of doing it. Just need a little bit more water there to thin this a tiny bit more. There we go. So that there is the head of my dragon. I think as well, I do need a little bit of something extra on the nose. So where I've got these two circles that I've drawn, I'm going to do some nice looking nostrils. So a big dragon's nostril there, and another dragon's nostril here. Now something else I might need are some more features to this face. So if I move the palette a little bit, I've got a bit more space to lie this down. So I think I'm going to do some big eyebrows, kind of curving over. So like this, and another one like this. There we go. And then I am going to put in some eyes as well. Now, I'm not going to do that just yet because I need to get some white, to get the white to the eyes first. So I'm just going to dry off my brush and grab my white paint. And there we go. And just a little dot of white, I don't need much. But that will be plenty for me to do some nice white eyes just underneath, and then I'll put in some filler in a second. So you'll see as well, white and red don't really like each other sometimes. You can see there's a bit of smudging there, but I'll just go over that in a sec when the white's a little bit drier to make it a little bit darker. So there we go. I'll leave that for just a minute to dry off. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn my attention back to the dragon's body. Because it looks a bit boring just being red, so I think I'm going to put some black stripes and things like that on it as well. Now obviously you can do whatever designs you want on your dragon. You could go with different colours, you could go with different styles. I'm going to do a nice quick and simple one, so I'm going to put a little bit more black out. And I'll do some swirly things, I think, like that, I think, maybe. We'll see what comes out while I'm painting. So one of the good things about painting is you don't have to always go in with a plan. So I think I'm going to do a nice little spirally shape coming at this end and just tucking in a little bit to the middle. There we go. Now this one here, I'm actually going to draw a line straight down and a line straight across this one. And just fill in that tiny little gap there, there, and there. And then I'm going to do I'll do a circle on this one. Actually, I'm going to do a big dot, I think, because I smudged that a little bit more than I intended. So there we go. I've just filled in that to make a nice big splodge. And I'm connecting them all with just a little line, just to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to do this one as a cross. It has a little bit of matching along it. So you can see what I've got so far. Just a little bit more there. And then I'm going to do another spiral at this end, just to top it off. Bend these a tiny bit and then I can reach in. There we go. Now my paint kind of dried out a little bit there, so I just need to go over that. There we go. So now I have a dragon body. I've got a bit of spare paint, so I'm actually going to do a line down the outside just of the spines. Now with the time they've had to dry, there's been plenty of time for it to dry, so actually I don't need to worry too much about the glue coming off now. If it does, I'll be able to re-glue it anyway. And one last one just going up here, just to there. There we go. I'm going to wipe off my brush, and the white paint seems to be mostly dry. It's a little damp, but that will be okay. If I can just grab a bit more, I'll go over these bits again. It looks a lot better after a second coat. Once the second coat is dry, we can put some pupils on. So I'll just clean my brush again. And while the second coat's drying, I think it's time to sort out a bit of the tail. So I'm going to move my paints a little bit, move the water. I'll leave this on the tray to dry. Move this over to my other tray. Now, you can do the tail in lots and lots of different ways. What I did was I did a little braid. I'm not very good at them though. So I'm sure you'll be able to do them much, much better than I can, and probably a lot quicker. So I'm going to snip a bit of red, snip a bit of green, and a little bit of black too. So I'm going to do a 3-strand tail. Now, like I said, I'm not very good at doing braids. So I'm going to tie a knot with all 3 together at the start. That's going to get me started on the braid. Just like that. Move the dragon head to there. And then I'm going to spread out my wool a little bit. And I think you do your braid a bit like this. So you put one side over to the middle, and then the next side over to the middle, and then you keep going like that until you think you're about done. Now, obviously me doing it this way, I wouldn't trust myself doing someone's hair, but at least with wool I can't really do it too wrong. And if I do, it's not too much of a problem. But we'll see how it goes. You can see it's starting to braid together. Mine's a very loose braid because I don't have loads of time. And, like I said, I'm not particularly good at doing braids. So I think my braid will be done shortly. I just pulled it a little bit too much then by accident. I think I'm very nearly done. This last one should do it. Across to there. Now look at that, that actually looks quite good. I'm quite pleased with that. So I'm going to pinch it together. I'm going to tie off this end and I'm going to just snip it off where I think I should have the end of the braid. There we go, that looks quite good. I'm going to snip it off about here. Actually, I'm going to not snip off there, I'm going to snip off a bit higher up and I'll show you why in a minute. There we go. Now, the white is still drying a little bit, so we'll do the tail before we do the white. So, to do the tail, you need to be very careful. I would suggest getting a pencil and find a spot in the middle of the back of the dragon and just carefully poke a hole through. There we go. And then do the same at the top. There we go. And again, you just need to be really careful doing that. You don't want to break the box, but also you don't want to poke yourself in the finger. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post these through this hole. So they come out under the egg box, like this. See? And then these are going to go up through this hole. So this is where I need the pencil again, just to poke them through. Just gently poke them. And they'll start coming out this hole there. There we go. Now the last thing we need to do is tie it off. Now I've made mine a little bit too short. What you should probably do is when you do this, tie it in first before you cut the wool. I was rushing a little bit, so I did it slightly wrong. There should still be just enough to tie it off. Yeah, I'm just going to pull that in a little bit. It'll hide the first knot anyway, and I'll just tie it off here. And one more for good luck. There we go, so that's that tail tied in. And this little bit I can just snip nice and short. There we go. So that's the tail of my dragon on. Now we need to go back to the head. So the last little bit to do with the head is just the pupils on the eyes, and then we'll be able to stick the head on. So I'm just going to get a little bit of black on the end of my brush and just go like that, do a nice little circle. I'll do another circle here, and then I'll wash my brush off. And just very quickly dry the brush before I put it away. Now we have our dragon head, our dragon body. The last thing you need to do is get some glue and stick the head to the body. Now, with Pritt Stick, it might take a while for it to set, it might come off, but if you have a bit of an issue, like I've suggested, you could use PVA glue or you could use a hot glue gun as well. So you just need to hold it so that the paint doesn't get anywhere. Put a nice blob of glue just in the middle of the head. at the back. And then we'll flip it over and find a good spot for the dragon head to go. I think about there. And just, ooh, I held it on, but I didn't hold it on long enough. I'll hold it on. Now you'll need to wait for a little bit for it to dry. Well, it took a little while longer than I imagined, but now the head is properly stuck on, which is brilliant. So, there we have a very nice looking Chinese dragon for New Year alongside my other one. These are going to look great on the windowsill. I think that's it for today. So thank you so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you again on another episode of Crafting at Home. See you again soon.